Good morning, Rabbi Sai. Today's Shiur sponsored by Stephen Burack. I'd like to thank Reb Eli for getting me and others excited about learning again. I hope this Zechus of learning and supporting Daf Yomi will lead to a sweet year for all of Klal Yisroel. By Merad Nakash, Refuah shleima, a good friend of his, Yehuda ben Rochel. By Moshe Kinsbursky, Refuah shleima for Mordechai Tzvi ben Rochel. And by Elchanan PRESSman, a big mazel tov to him. In honor of Reb Eli, even though you weren't able to make it as a Mesader Kiddushin last night at Dovids Chasuna, that you and MDY are fully responsible for. Okay, thank you. Thank you again for the Mini Chumash Shiur you gave the other day in our honor. Refuah shleima, big mazel tov, Elchanan. Should have a lot of nachas from him, from the other chasen, from all your kids. Refuah shleima, Braina Bas Yenta Dvaira. By Joel Pollack, from my dear grandmother, Esther Rochel, who passed away today at the age of 101. She was Eishes Chayil, for whom the lesson of Succah, Mem Tes Amud Beis, is relevant. Chesed, she showed kindness to others in the last weeks of her life. His mother, Naomi Pollack, devoted hours every day to caring for her mother for years throughout COVID, providing shining example to Kibbutz Avei. May her memory be a blessing. By Fischl Gross and his wife, in memory of Reb Mordechai Menashe ben Marty Samber, Mr. Marty Samber, Patriarch of Shalsheles of all stars, Reb Dovids Chasuna of South Bend, who is Fischl's brother-in-law, Reb Avi Samber from Telz, and Reb Eli Stefansky of Chicago, who I know very well. He's the principal of Ari Crown. My two sons went there for a big kufa. The Levaya is Erev Shabbos in Chicago. I love this email from David Dimbert. You remember him? He came here with coffee. He has a coffee thing from Highland Park. We're We're on Daf Mem Tes talking about the midah of AVRAHAM Avinu and the idea of giving shoes to people who want to make Aliyah L'Regel, a huge shkach to the Shiur, to Reb Eli and everyone who contributes to the Buy Gemara campaign. To someone who doesn't learn, a free Gemara is like a free pair of shoes. An entrance to the Yom Tovim. You're putting shoes on the people who don't even understand their own dreams of Aliyah. Tisku kulchem l'Torah l'asochem b'isem Tovim yishkoyach David. By Hevel Hayofi. Not his real email address, I guess. Dear Reb Eli, I would like to thank you for being one of the sole sources of light in my life right now. He goes on to say, I sharing your tsar. I have a very similar situation. I'm telling him. Now that we got past that boring stuff, Sukkah Daf Chavav, because who remembers dates anymore when you learn the Daf? He's going by the Dapim, like similar to what you were talking about. Will be forever etched in my mind thanks to your dedication to the Shiur despite your son's wedding. I was also very inspired, as you have said it, was a nace, the whole being of the wedding, a very close second to Sukkah Daf Lamed, when you gave the Shiur after the Sheva Brachas. May Hashem repay you for your dedication, Merad Nakash, Simcha, true Nachas and Simcha, for all your kids. Amen. And may Hashem give you the strength to always be able to give Shiurim. Amen. P.S. Okay, name withheld. Hevel Hayofi. By Benjamin Frankel. Shalom Reb Eli. It's a pleasure having you tour the U.S. and being able to meet you at the Sheva Brachas and again live Shiur in Woodmere Motzei Shabbos. That said, having Nachman by your side live in MDY is priceless. I can only imagine how many lines were skipped without Nachman chirping in. I was wondering why they need to have another free Gemara campaign. It's enough already. The more people who join, the longer the line will be to say Shalom Aleichem when you come to the U.S. next. But after reading a Ramban on this week's parasha, I know why. The Ramban in Perek Chav Zayin Pasuk Chav Vav says as follows: loosely translated, if one learns and teaches, if they have the ability to be mechazik others and don't, it is included in the Arur. A gross yishkoach to Yossi Klein, everyone is behind the Free Gemara campaign. We should all be zechut to greet the Shechina Bekarov, BJ Frankel, MDY North, Woodmere. Klalu Prat by Ari Presser. Hello, Reb Eli. Shiur is amazing. Was always on and off with the daf for a few years. Found you by accident. Have been doing it now for a month. Love every minute. Perfect mix of fun and explanations. Today's Shiur, you really explained Klal Prat to Klal better than any Rebbe I ever had. The only thing I didn't understand was why, by the Riboy, they only excluded cheres and not, let's say, wood. Thanks for your sacrifice. Looking forward to being part of the Chabura years to come. Ari Presser, Continental Casing Corporation. Yishkoich Ari. Well, cheres is the least of all kalim. It's the bottom of the bottom. The only thing less than that, I guess, is klei galolim, but that's for sure not included. There's no way that you could bring a kli galal takadosh baruch Hu. That would be. Yeah, okay, but if you go in, I mean, the bottom of the line is a kli cheres. Then you have wood, then you have stone, whatever. But cheres is on the bottom. Oh, and one more. Oh, we're doing good here with time. Yehuda Harriman. Shalom Aleichem Rebelli. My name is Yehuda. I'm 22, living in Teaneck, married, have a child on the way. Bezer Hashem. Getting married young meant starting to work and leave the Mesader. I wanted to thank you for helping me gaining real geschmack in my learning and being kavei itim l'Torah. By joining them, Succah, I've also been able to improve other parts of my learning, say the Yishnai, such as Mishnayis, Shnai Mikra, and Mishnah Brura. Beautiful. I want to share a funny maisa that happened a few weeks back. I was at a chassid and noticed a man with headphones on, computer out, sitting at a table alone outside the hall. As my wife and I walked past, I noticed a familiar face on the screen, chuckling and moving his hands a lot. I stopped to get a closer look at him. He's no other than Yosef Biliak. I told him I'm an avid listener and how much I enjoy the shiur. He told me to email, Thanks again, Rebelli, coming in my learning to a new level. Emir Hashem, looking forward to finishing many seconds of the shiur, Shas and beyond, Kol Tuv, Yehuda Hammerman. Here he is with Yosef Biliak at the wedding. Now, Yosef is on his way to the airport. On his way back to Eretz Yisrael, and he stopped off at the wedding, and he decided to... You had to. Chaim Snow was out of business that day. No, I'm saying, it's unbelievable dedication. Yishkoyach Yosef. Yosef is now working on a big surprise for the Siyum, which is the new song.
Why do you keep on saying the surprise?
Oh, people want to know about it? I could show it.
Surprise. And then you say what it is.
No. to hear it and to see it is, I could say it. It's nothing.
Okay.
A song. What's the song? Shalom Aleichem. Who? What's his name? What? David Cohen's brother. Shalom Aleichem. Very nice. All right. You came at a beautiful time. We're on Daf Nun Aleph, which means we are 50 daf into Masechet Sukkah. 50 daf ago, a lot of people started for the very first time with us, and they held out 50 long days. Actually, very short days. Today's a beautiful, beautiful daf. We're holding the last words on Daf Nun Amud Beis. Over Papa. Ketanoi. So we're in the middle of the Machloikis. What is considered the Iker Shira and the Beis Hamikdash? Menachem, figure out. Well, I think we figured it out. Shira Motzei Shabbos is going to be at 9:30, not before Slichos, because there are a lot of people that do the next day, including Yirmi Gold, who doesn't even come to the Shir. Kitanoi. No, stop. Threw that out. Desanya Avdei Koyanim Hoyu. You could do it, no problem. You do it. I'm going to be preparing the next morning Shir. Okay, so now we have a machlokes. How do you, what is the Torah? When the Torah says there should be a shira by a karban, by other things, what does it mean? With an instrument, a kli, with the Levim's mouth or whoever sings. So, similar to the machlokes says the Gemara Ketanoi. Desanya, Avdei Koyanim Hayu, incredible. By the karban tamid, who was playing the instruments, they were slaves. They were goyim. So we have a three-way machlokes. Who played the instruments? Were they goyim? Were they Yisraelim? Or were they Levim? These were Yisraelim, not even Levim, but something in between. They weren't Avadim. They were Yisraelim, special families. Beis Habgarim, Tzipiraya. They were from Uman. Shahayu Masim Lakuhuna. Sorry. I'm sorry. Don't get too excited, Avi. Shahayu Masim Lakuhuna. They had such good yichos that their daughters, their almanas, would marry into the kahuna. No questions asked. Yeah. So he says, no. The only people that played the instruments were Levim. So is that similar to our machlokes? The man, you know why a goy could play the guitar? Because it's nothing. The main thing is the Levim singing their beautiful voices. whoever accompanies them with a guitar, with a kinar, with a flute, that it doesn't matter. It could be on a recording, it could be a guy, it doesn't matter. And the other man that says we're Levi, well, no, when the Torah says shira, it means instruments. So therefore, obviously, it doesn't mean a eved. No. So what's the kasha? Then what do you do with the middle man domar? The man domar that says it's Yisrael miman of shach. If it's important, then it has to be a Levi. If it's not important, it can be a eved. Why Yisrael? It should be even slaves should be able to. And if the Torah is referring to instruments, certainly, when the Torah talks about shira, it's referring to bapeh. It has to be singing. Tosis is asking amazing kasha. If that's the case, this is just for pshat of the sugi. If that's the case, then we had this chart the other day. You remember this chart? There are 12 days that you could play the flute. What are the 12 days? 8 days of Succahs. Then we go on. For 1,000 points, it was the Erev Pesach and Pesach Shem. Fine. How do you come to 8 days of Succahs? If Iker Shira Bapeh, the Torah says you should sing it with your mouth, so how in the world are you allowed to play a violin on Yontif? A violin is just extra. How can you get to 8 days? How can you be Mechal Shabbos with a violin? The Torah doesn't say violin. The Torah says you should do it with your mouth. So Taisa says, and this is, everybody wonders about this also, the whole list to play an instrument is only the Rabbanan, because you might come to fix it. So there's no shvus in the Beis HaMikdash, but en chanami, Iker Shira Bapeh. Fine. That's the next line. That's the next line. Says the Gemara. The that is the Metzias. What happened? Listen, sometimes the Avadim are really good instrument players, and that's why they use them. That's what happened over there. And the other Avadim said, no, it was the Israelim that were better. Who's the band? Who played in the band? You ever saw that video? I was just thinking about this. There's a video of in France. So anyways, I saw a Mordechai video of 3 non-Jews singing a Shweki song. Yeah, Rachim. Yeah, Jamaicans. Okay, so that's what it was. Why did they hire them? Because they were better than the Jewish guys over there. They were good. They were really good. Talk to Gemara. Oh, did I skip? Okay, so if that was the Maisa, who cares? Why are we telling us that, you should know there were slaves up there playing the instruments? Says the Gemara, it's a huge nafkimina. When you see a guy on the stage, on the band stage, could I grab him and say, you can marry my daughter? You could have Meiser, that means you're a Levi? Or there's no raya, just because you're up there, maybe you're a non-Jew. The fact that you're playing instruments up there means 0. So I don't marry you off to anybody. I don't give you Meiser. And the other man says the Yisrael, Kosovar, it's in between thing. You're allowed to be Yisrael up on the stage, and therefore you have good yichus. But it doesn't mean anything that you're a Levi. So therefore you don't get Meiser, which a Levi is entitled to, the 10%. Kosovar, Malin, Meduchon, Bein Liyuchsin, Bein Lemeiser. So if I see somebody on the stage, that means he's a Levi, that means he has yichus, and it means that he could eat Meiser. Says the Gemara. Okay, so for this, Rabbi said we have to go back to yesterday's sugya. And it goes like this, very, very pashut. We have a machloikas. It's a very simple machloikas, which we add parts to. So we have the flute, the chalil. Rabbi Yossi says you can play the flute on Shabbos. Chacham say you cannot play the flute on Shabbos. Okay, that's what we have. What does that mean? In what situation? What scenario? You could play a flute. What? Stam? Play a flute on Shabbos. Comes Rabbi Yosef, that's the sugi that we had yesterday, and says, no, let me explain to you. The machlokes, you see the red box here? The machlokes is only in one case, by a carbon. That's carbon is a daraisa. Comes Rabbi Yossi says, flute, you could play by a carbon when you bring a carbon. Chacham say you cannot play a flute by a carbon. But by Simchas Beis She'eva down here, there's no machlokes. You see, there's no red box. Everybody agrees that Simchas Beis She'eva cannot play a flute on Shabbos. Why? It's just Simcha. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah they should play a flute. We invented it. We decided to make it all exciting and happy, so we brought in a band. But it doesn't mean that you could be doicha Shabbos with it. That's Rav Yosef. His explanation of this machlokes. Comes Rabbi Yirmiyah right now today and explains it differently. By the way, I was thinking to myself, like, if you learned in yeshiva and you see this chart, like, what? I'm going to look at a chart for Daf Yomi. It's pasnished. But we're learning quickly, and to, even though it's a very simple machlokes, but to add another part, and all of a sudden you become confused, and you feel like you don't have the sugya. I think it's unbelievable. This chart, mamish, for me at least, it made it clear for me. So here's the same machlokes. Rabbi Yirmiyah says that the machlokes is down here, not over here, not between carbon and carbon. By carbon and carbon, you remember the sugya? You know it. You did the 40 siyum on Sukkah. 62 groups, and therefore what? You don't remember the sugya anymore. Okay, makes sense. All right, so run your groups. Do me a favor, run the groups and keep all your comments over there with the groups. The machlokes is between Shoyeva and I'm going to get, you have to be nice, even to the Nebuch, so what the hell is that?
That's the way to go to Zechus.
Come here, Yeshua. Come to the front. Okay, so the machlokes is between She'eva and Simchas Beis She'eva. You hear this unbelievable idea? It's basically, we kind of entices, we kind of said it. There's a machlokes in Simchas Beis She'eva, can you play a flute, even though it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah you should play a flute. But it's only a Durabanan, and there's a big simcha going on in the Beis HaMikdash, so the Rabbanan pushes off this thing. You can push off the Rabbanan because it's a major, major simcha. Don't write me any emails, I know I'm a big rush or whatever. Fine. Yeah, so according to Rabbi Yirmiyah, there's no machlokes in carbon. Please zoom in on him, please. Gershon, do me a favor. I don't know if you can do it quickly, but you got to. He's already. Okay, fine. Nachamal, very, very simple machlokes for Boisai. We're making a whole big deal out of this. According to Rabbi Yirmiyah, there's no machlokes in carbon. Everybody agrees that a flute pushes off carbon because it's deraisa. The whole machlokes is even in Simchas Beis She'eva, where there's no mention in the Torah. Rabbi Yossi says flutes, you can play music all you want. It's a simcha. On Shabbos, of course, on Shabbos. What's the shaila? You know what? I'll stop right over here and say something very interesting. Very, very interesting. I think a lot of people might know this. I wasn't so clear about it. Imagine you walk into a chasen on Friday night. They used to make chasenas Friday night. And you see music playing. What would you say to yourself? Crazy. Doesn't make any sense. You're allowed to ask a non-Jew on Shabbos to come to your chasen and play music. For Simchas Chasen V'Kala. Halach and Shulchan Aruch. You hear this? For Simchas Chasen V'Kala, you're allowed to. Now, there's also a halacha about Simchas Torah. So Simchas Torah, you're allowed to dance and clap your hands. But you're not allowed to ask for music. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to dance and you're not allowed to clap your hands. You know, the Shulchan Aruch, the famous Shulchan Aruch, that you're not allowed to clap, you're not allowed to snap your fingers or bang on the table like drum. And if somebody does it, you don't tell them not to because it's better that you should be shaygig. You're not mazid. What about just dancing? Like walking around the table, like, you know, like the Litvish dance. Yeah, like that. So Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says it's not considered dancing and it's okay on Shabbos. I'll tell you a quick ma'aseh. The first week I davened here in the shul in Bnei Yeshivas. All of a sudden, the Olam, I couldn't believe it. Such a geschmack Olam. They get up by Kabbalah Shabbos and they're like, oh, Shabbos, and they're dancing around the bima. I was like, this is a Mordechai shul. In fact, I never went anywhere else. In 8 years, I've never davened in another shul, ever. But the second week I was there, they weren't going around the bima. So I was like, hey, whatever. Third week. Fourth week I'm there, all of a sudden I hear the guy going to the guys next to me. Listen, there's a new guy coming. We got to do this thing around the bima thing. We got to impress him. It's like, are you serious? He's not even smiling because he knows it's true. You were part of that going around the bima thing and pretending that you're all geschmack. Okay. Anyway, fine. Fine. If you want to see these halachas in Siman, Shin Lamed Ches, Siv Beis, I thought it was incredible. Mamish music, the whole thing, because Simchas Chasen V'Kala. Simchas Torah, you're allowed to dance and clap your hands, but you're not allowed to play the music. Okay. So, but here we are, smack in the middle of a different sugya. Yeah. Where are we? I have no idea where we are. So going back to Rabbi Yirmiyah. This machlokes, let's do it again. This machlokes we had yesterday. That according to Rabbi Yosi, you could play a flute on Shabbos. And according to Rabbi Chacham, you cannot. He says, there's no machlokes when it comes to carbon and derice. Of course everybody says you could play a flute. Talking about an invented kind of thing that's not in the Torah. Simchas Beis Sheva, to be happy on Yantif. Could you play a flute when you're only pushing off of the Rabbanan in the Beis HaMikdash? And Rabbi Yosi says you could, Chacham says you can't. Machlokes b'shir sheyeva. The Rabbi Yosi where Yehuda Sava Simcha Yisera Nami Deichas Shabbos. V'Rabbanan Savri Simcha Yisera Eina Deichas Shabbos. To have extra Simcha you're not allowed on Shabbos. Right? And by the way, this halacha that I said about a chasana only applies to chasana, not by Kabbalah Shabbos, and not by other milah and other things. You cannot play instruments. It's by special halacha about chasana and kal. Al b'shir carbon. By carbon, these two checks. I hold Rabbi Yirmiyah, there's no machlokes by carbon. Whereas yesterday we had Rav Yosef who says the machlokes is by carbon, and by Simchas Beis Sheva there's no machlokes. Everybody says it's also to play an instrument. Meisvei. I have a kasha. It says Mefurish in the Brisa, Shir Sheyeva Doichas Shabbos. Here, according to Rav Yosef, there's nobody that holds that you could play instrument on Simchas Beis Sheva. Zero. Aser. And all of a sudden over here, look at this Brisa. Shir Sheyeva Doichas Shabbos. Even on Simchas Beis Sheva, you could be Machal Shabbos with instruments. Did Rav Yosef Rav Yehuda? So it's a big kasha on Rav Yosef. But there's two parts to Rabbi Yosef. Don't forget. We just slugged up this part. We have here that Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda says you could play instruments by Simchas Beis Sheva. But there's another part. Don't forget this part. That in carbon, he says there's a machlokes. Now I'm going to prove to you that he's wrong in that also. There's no machlokes in carbon, and in fact everybody holds, just like this, that carbon is mutter, and you should play instruments on Shabbos. So now, perhaps I could just be medayik. The whole machlokes that says in the Brisa is on Simchas Beis Sheva. Mashma that there's zero machlokes by carbon, and it's okay. And that's also kasha on Rav Yosef, because Rav Yosef said that it's not okay to play by a carbon. Says the Gemara, no, that's not a great kasha. Both of these statements are Rav Yosef. Sorry, this one right over here. Both of the statements are Rav Yosef. Tarti, that there's a machlokes in carbon and there's no machlokes in sheyeva, we just slugged up. He says, no, look, there's going to be two machlokes in. A machlokes by carbon, according to Chacham, you cannot play a flute. And in Simchas Beis Sheva, you can't play a flute. I hold, there's two machlokes in here. So why did the Bryce only mention one out of the two? Say two. This is a much bigger chiddush. Listen to this. You could be Mechalel Shabbos just for Simcha when it's not mentioned in the Torah. Because I want to have a good time on Yantif, at Shabbos Yantif, I'm going to be Mechalel Shabbos and Yantif together. Doesn't say in the, yeah, I hold you could. That's a much bigger chiddush that I could play a flute when I'm bringing a carbon dairais when the Torah says shira by the carbon. The Torah never says shira by shayeva. Okay. So that's not a good raya. But I have a different raya. But in our Mishnah it says Rochel shebeis hashre'eva she'enu doiches haShabbos she'enu doiches haShabbos v'lo yes hayantiv. How could I say that? How could I say, according to Rabbi Yosef in the Teretz, you see it says Betirut, that is a machlokes by carbon and there's a machlokes by Simchas Beis Sheva. But it says in our Mishnah, our Mishnah says that Simchas Beis Sheva, this is wrong. There's no check mark over here. You know, the carbon doicha, but it seems like from our Mishnah that carbon does push off. According to Rabbi Yossi, two checks. Everything, carbon and sheyeva. Elolav rabbanon. V'tiyuv to the Rabbi Yossi v'tarti. So it has to be going according to Rabbanon, and therefore I do have a major kasha on Rabbi Yossi that what? That carbon pushes off Shabbos. According to Rabbanon, carbon pushes off Shabbos, and Rabbi Yossi says carbon doesn't. Okay, says the Gemara Nusugya. My time at the man Amar Ikashir Bikli. Where did he get the idea that when the Torah says the word shira, song, it means with the instrument? He said, Chizkiah said, bring the oila. And when you bring the oila, start singing shir. So what does the word shir mean? Look at the next word. Klei Dovid Melech Yisrael. There were instruments here, says the Gemara. So that's it. So you see that shir means instruments. Great. And why does the other man say? I was thinking to myself, like, would I ever buy a CD that had a guy singing without any instruments? But you do buy CDs that only have instruments. So what's the ikir here? Maybe a cappella with drums, with everything. What? Yeah, okay, whatever. I'm just saying, fakert. Not a cappella, just a guy's voice. Have you ever purchased something like that? My time, if it was Nachman Telz, I would. My time, the man Amar Yishir Baped Chsiv Ayig Chechad LeMechatzrim VeLeMeshorim LaShmiya Koil Echad. So you hear this? Listen to this pasuk. It says in the pasuk Mechatzrim. What is that? Trumpets. But the Gemara is proving from here that your mouth is not a kli. It says LaMeshorim. The singers LaShmiya Kol Echad. It's just their voice. The pasuk says LaMechatzrim trumpets. Says Rashi. It doesn't mean that this is a klishira. The trumpets were there for other reasons. It's not part of the musical instruments. The trumpets, they sound noises, but that's not where, okay. Singing is with your mouth. So what's each one going to do? The other one's pasuk. First he started singing with his mouth. And then he accompanied him, harmonies and all that other thing with the kalim. So the kalim are not the ikr. But it says in the pasuk that with your mouth is the ikr, not. I'm sorry. It says that with the mouth, not with the kalim. Should be like the trumpets. What's a trumpet? Okay, it's not a musical instrument, but it's a kli. Fine. Says the Heilige Mishnah. Where's that? Sponsored by official for the Ilu Nishmas Mordechai Menashe ben AVRAHAM Samber, whose Levaya is today. Famous Mishnah. Mi shlei ra simchas beis she'eva le'ra simcha miyama. If you didn't see the Simchas Beis She'eva, you don't know what you're missing. You never saw Simcha in your life. I saw the Meiri says that it's a combination of Simcha of Gashmius and Ruchnius. It's the two. Gashmius, you're dancing and having a great time, but it's with the Shef of Ruchnius, so it's a complete Simcha. That's what it means. So, on the first day of Yantav, Matzah Yantav. So here's the Beis Hamikdash. They go into the Ezes Nashim. All this is Ezes Nashim. Here's where the Mizbech is, the Heichal, the Kodesh HaKadoshim on this side. From here on, this is the Ezes Nashim. It's called Ezes Nashim because on Yantav, the women would stand over here on the balconies. Umisakdim Sham Tikun Gadol. As the Gemara is going to explain, let me just cheat a little bit because we might not have a lot. Well, we're doing okay. But I'll just say this, L'Kaved, Elchanan PRESSman, and the Chasuna. The Mishnah says they were misakin a tikkun gadol. They made a tremendous tikkun in Klal Yisroel. And what is it? That they instituted the idea of mechitzas in a shul. There was a lot of problems going on between the men and the women. First they try to put the men inside and the women outside. We're going to see the whole sugya. It never worked. There was always kalos roish. So they put the women on the balcony and the men down there, and that worked. That's a tikkun gadol. So as for Moshe Feinstein, why are we making ourselves crazy and we have to build platforms for the women? Just tell the women, stay home. Stay home. You have such issues. Every year you try to... So he says, you see from here, that we want the women involved. We want them to come to shul. It's good for them to come to the Beis Hamikdash. It's good for them to see what's going on. And we'll do everything we can to make it happen. Yeah.
With the woman should sit next to their husbands.
Yeah.
So him and Aaron Cutler, they sat next to their wives, and everyone else was on both sides. But Aaron Cutler and Moshe Kinsbursky sat next to their wives.
And nobody else.
Yeah, Moshe saying this is we're going through Moshe.
Yeah.
Why do we have a mic?
Oh. Look at these beautiful menorahs. They're 50 amma tall, approximately 100 feet tall. And each one had 4 containers out of sfalim shalzav made out of gold. Candelabra. And there were 4 ladders, 100 feet tall each one. V'arba yiladim, and there was arba yiladim, like the youngsters. Bachar Rashi says mepirchei kuhuna ubiideim kadim, and they had the vessels full. Shalmeya v'esrim lug. It was 30 lug per head. Shematil kol sefel v'sefel. They put 30 lug each one. How did they make the wicks? From the worn out bigdei kuhuna, from the pants, they would tear them apart, and they use them as wicks. Every single chutz in Yerushalayim, we're not talking about like a remote today, like, in the Ir Atika, whatever was considered Yerushalayim then. Me'ira ma'or Beis HaShe'eva, and Rashi goes on to explain that the front, we learned in Yuma, the front wall of the Beis HaMikdash was lower so that you could see from Har HaZeisim, so maybe the light went over the wall, and they were very tall, these candelabras. Great. By the way, I forgot to mention, there's okay, I don't have time now. Say it a different time. Maisa with the Baal Shem Tov. No, we don't have time. Okay, we'll say it a different time, if we remember. So, you had Chasidim, holy people that were Chasidim, the did lefnim mishur sadin v'antzir imayis hayu merakdim b'fneim. We're turning to Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis, sponsored by the MDY Tilm Group. For all those who need Shidduchim Refuahs and Yeshuas, please join Tilm.8mindaf.com, and by Shlomo Lelazarian from LA, in honor of my wife for sacrificing her life in order for me to prepare the shiur. Ba'avuka shel or b'yadayim. Says Rashi, they used to shkoyach. They used to it's okay, it's Peseder. Here. Yeah. So here's the picture, here's how it works. Here's Reb Dovid juggling 3 of these in our base medrash without rishos. Here, take.
Yep.
Oh, you want me to juggle it?
Yeah.
I don't think so. But Rabbi said this is amateur. This is 3, and Rashi says there were 8 of these. 8. Some did 6, some did 8. Okay, this is gonna be good. Shkoyach. So again, it's the Gashmis and the Ruchnias. You have the juggling going on, and you have the Shirois, V'sushbachos, Nakash Baruch Hu, V'alevim b'kinoirois, u'b'nevalim, u'b'tziltayim, u'b'chatzaitzrois, different instruments, u'b'klei shir, b'loi mispor. There's no max to how many instruments there were. So, as we know, if you look over here again, you could see this circle, this semicircle, is 15 steps that represented the Shir HaMalos, the 15 Shir HaMalos in Tehillim. And it's when you go from the Azara into the Ezras Nashim. So here it is. They were on these steps. We're going to see that David HaMelech, he was digging for the shitin to get to dig out the drainage that for the wine and the water, and he got too deep. 16. The Gemara later on, 2 daf, 16,000 amas down. The water went down, and you need to bring the water back up. So he said Shir HaMalos, and it brought it back up. 15,000 amma, each shir mile is 1,000 amma. Now the water is only 1,000 amma below the surface. So, here you could see, if you look closely, there are two kohanim right over here. Shiyored me'ezras Yisrael le'ezras nashim. This shar right over here, shar nikoner. I don't know if you need to see it over here, but this shar nikoner. That's where they stood. Sha'oilo sha'oilo there. And they had two trumpets in their hands. Kara gever. We had a machlokes in Masechet Yuma. Is gever the rooster, or gever was a man that screamed out? And if you remember, we had Rav. Nobody recognized him, and he was saying over. And the I forgot who the Tana was. He said Kara gever. So Rav said it means the guy. So he says no, I think it means the chicken. So Rav yelled at him. He said, like, you're not even, who are you to even argue with me? I said it in front of everybody, all these g'daylim, and they didn't know there was Rav. Okay, fine. They do this 3 times. Then they go down the steps. Here you go, another picture. They come down the steps, they're on the 10th step. Again, now they're down on the bottom. Taku, Ve'eriu, V'taku, again, they did Tkiya, True Tkiya. They did like a Tkiya G'doila, a really long one, a prolonged Tkiyas, so that they could get all the way to the other side. So we're talking about, they exited this way. This is the wall that I said before is lower, so you could see in all the way to the Heichal. They came down the stairs, they're going this way. This is the east. Then the two kohanim, where are they? Yeah, here we go. The two kohanim with the trumpets turn, facing everybody else. In other words, facing the Kodesh HaKadoshim, facing this way. Va'amru, and they said a very sad pasuk in the Navi, Aviseinu shahayu ba'makim hazeh, almost the pasuk. Referring to in Beis Rishon, that a lot of people were over the sun. So in order, it was mamash a disgrace to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They turned their backs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and went towards the east where the sun was and bowed to the sun and turned their backs to the Kodesh HaKadosh. So he said, we're not like them. And us, our eyes are to you, Hashem. They will repeat, we say in Slichos, it's a little bit of a different lashon. Says the Gemara Tanarabon.
Is this the conclusion of the sympathic
Probably the beginning. I would assume it's the beginning. That's when they did the whole. That's when they poured and this what? Right. Tosis asks a very, very interesting question. Kriyat HaGever is in the morning. Brings a good point. So that means they drew the water before by Elois. So then the water is possible. The water is lino. Doesn't matter. Still lino. That's not an eitzah to watch it. Night comes, night goes. It's lino. It says Taisves that a big side. Lina only occurs when you get into the Beis Hamikdash. They didn't get to the Beis Hamikdash. They drew the water in the Shiloach and they brought it. They drew it by Elois, but by the time they got to the Beis Hamikdash, it was already daytime. And Mela, there's no Lina, and the Lina occurs in the Beis Hamikdash. Now the Gemara is just going to bring other examples of things. If you haven't seen it, you haven't seen it in your life. This amazing party of Simcha. If you didn't see Yerushalayim at its height, then you didn't see a beautiful place. If you didn't see the Beis Hamikdash when it was standing, so you didn't see a gorgeous building. Which Beis Hamikdash? There's 3. There's the 2 Beit Hamikdash that we're familiar with, Beis Rishon, Beis Sheni, but also the Beis Sheni went through a big renovation by Hurdus. Are we referring to that one? Or Rabaya? Now it can't be. We know that the first Beis Hamikdash was nicer than the second. So Mela can't be the second one. In fact, we're referring to the beautiful building that Hurdus built. Why is it so beautiful? He used green marble, umarmira, and white marble. So it's green and white. Yeah, it was green. Kuchla, a little bit of blue granite going on there. Umarmira and white. Apik sofa vayel sofa. Similar, if you look at the kaisel, not every stone doesn't lie directly above each other. It's a little bit indented. Each one is indented inwards. Somehow that enables you maybe from the back of the stone to put the cement. He didn't want to put cement between the bricks. Like the kaisel today, there's no cement between it. And that's why it's really nice. He didn't want to do that. Savar l'mishay b'dahava. He wanted to cover the entire wall with gold plating. Let it go. It's much nicer the way it looks like now. The mischazi kidvasa diyama. There's an optical illusion. When you look at it, different colors, you kind of get dizzy. Like it almost waves. If you look at it, it starts moving because everyone is different color. Like people wear these shirts, different boxes, and you look at it, and all of a sudden you start getting a little. You think it's moving. I think that's what it means over here. It looks like waves. Leave it. Don't put any gold. It looks better like this. Tanya Reb Yehuda Omer. Mishlei du plustun. Rashi brings the word metropolitan. It's a combination of three words. Du means two, plu, stone, which is the bluestone shell. Now we're talking about the beautiful shul and the congregation that was in Mitzrayim. If you haven't seen that, you haven't seen a shul. You didn't see the covet of Klal Yisroel. Omru, Kimin, Besalki, Gdoilo, like a big giant palace or whatever, something that they had in Rome. Stav lefnim stav, 2 rows of benches. Sometimes kiflaim kiyotzim Mitzrayim. Double Yotzim Mitzrayim 600,000, 1.2 million men, adult men, in one shul. V'hayuba shim v'echad katedroi shalzav, chairs of gold. Keneged shim v'echad Sanhedrin Gdoila. They themselves in Mitzrayim had 71 Sanhedrin. So for each Rav, a beautiful golden chair. How much do these chairs cost? Think to yourself. Kol achaz v'achat in a p'usam esr v'echad. The guy takes out the word riboy because it's almost impossible. I'll tell you in a second why. Riboy is 10,000, right? So each chair had 21 kikri zav. A kikar zav, for argument's sake, is about 36 kilo. Times 2.2 for pounds, times ounces. I just did the quick calculation. $50 million. That's if it's without riboy. If you do 50 million times 10,000, it's going to be a number that doesn't really work, says the guy. Okay, so $50 million, I could sort of understand. Each chair, at least $50 million. There's 1.2 million people. Think about it. 1.2 million people, so you need a stage in the center. And you'd stand in the center, he had a flag. He just waved his flag. And everybody answers Amen. And that they bring halacha from here. Could you say Amen like out here? You're not here. You hear it on a microphone. From here, you see sort of that if you're at least in the same room in the same place, that if you don't hear Amen, you don't hear the chazan at all. You just see a flag. You could be mishtatev and say Amen with everybody else. But of course, if you see this on YouTube 5 hours later, me making a bracha, you do not say Amen. They knew which bracha was. They also know on Zoom what it is on YouTube. They each category of person. If you're a psychologist, you sat with the psychologist. Lawyers with lawyers. Dentists with dentists. People that dealt with gold, and silver, the silversmiths. If you wove clothing, you sat by it. Why? You go to his section and you get a job from them. Omar Abaya, Rabbi Isaiah, major yisoid in life. Vikulu, Katlinu, Alexandra, and Moigdan. They take out the word Moigdan. Alexander, whoever he was, killed them all. My time answer. Why did he kill them? Mishum da Avraham Krolos Sifon Loshu V'derech Hazeh Oid. You're not going to go back to Mitzrayim, and they went back to Mitzrayim. V'inu Hadar Asu. So the Gemara just goes on to say, this week's parasha, Rabbi Sai, this week's parasha. In the Klal, he heard, the king hears them reading it, he says, it's a raya, I'm supposed to kill you, because it says that a king is going to come from the distance and kill you all. It takes usually 10 days to get here. It took me only 5. So he killed them all. I want to say real quickly, the Maisa was over there that Gedalia was in charge of Klal Yisroel, and a really bad guy killed him. What was his name again? Yishmael ben, whatever his name was, killed him. And Klal Yisroel went to the Navi Yirmiyah and they said, what should we do? The king put Gedalia in charge and now he's dead. They're going to think that we killed him. What should we do? He says, let me get a nevuah. He didn't get a nevuah for 10 days. They were under pressure. And then all of a sudden he comes with the nevuah and he says an unbelievable nevuah. He says, if you stay in Eretz Yisrael, you'll have everything you need, kol tuv sela. But I'm only going to tell you the nevuah, he says, if you swear to me that you're going to listen to the nevuah. He says, of course we swear. He says, but if you go to Mitzrayim, you're all going to die. So they said, it's not a nevuah, it happened 10 days later, they went to Mitzrayim. Rabbi said, what happened? They died. But if you chap what's going on here, when did they die? 650 years later. 650 years later. So I think it's a major yesod. You have to take this in the right way. I know I'm going to get a little bit of flack, but I'm going to say it anyways. Sometimes, when the Torah says, Loi seisifun lashu b'derech haza'id, it's a mefursha pasuk. So what do you say to yourself? I'm here already for 600 years. My forefathers are here. I have a minhag to live here. A minhag against the Torah. But it says in the mefursha in the Torah. So you have to do a cheshbon and nefesh to yourself. It's not an excuse to say, but my father lived there, and my grandfather lived there. It's a mefursha pasuk. Each person has to take their own cheshbon and nefesh. So people say, but my Rav told me this and that, so I'm not going into that. But sometimes, if it's against the mefursha pasuk, they got killed 650 years later. Things unbelievable. Have a wonderful Shabbos. We'll see what's a Shabbos at 9:30. A guten Shabbos.